Welcome. Megan is Missing was released in 2011 and was directed by Michael Goi, and it's about a teenager who disappears after meeting with an online acquaintance. So this movie had a huge boom recently because of TikToks coming out saying that this was the most disturbing film ever. People were shaking, all of this stuff. And now, I've heard of this movie before. I never saw it, and I just watched it yesterday with a few friends, which was the first time I've ever seen it. And this reminds me a lot of The Girl in the Basement and things that I said about that. The Girl in the Basement, as many of you know if you saw the video, but if you didn't, it's based on a true story about a girl who was locked in her basement for over 20 years by her father, and she was raped and all of that. And let me just put out a trigger warning now. Trigger, there probably should have been one before, but Tina, you can edit and put one before I even say anything. But this movie is based on actual events. And by that, it's not that this movie literally happened. It's more so like parts of this movie happened in real life, but we're putting stuff together and adding some different things. A good example of another movie that's like that is The Strangers. It's based off events that all separately happen, but it's not based on a true story. So yeah, Megan is Missing is based off actual events. And so I feel more comfortable giving this movie a rating, although similar to The Girl in the Basement, this is a very, very exploitive movie. But unlike The Girl in the Basement, it's just exploitive kind of for the sake of being exploitive. And by that, I kind of mean that they didn't need to show certain things in this movie, and they just go on ahead and just show whatever they want. And there's a scene towards the end of the movie that is just full on exploitive. So I was not for that. I'm just gonna get that out of the way. Like, cons, did not like that. Was it done well? I mean, the acting is very weak in this movie. A lot of the characters act very bad. For me, the best actress in the movie was Amy. I thought she did the best job, and her performance by the end of the movie is fantastic. Like, I couldn't take my eyes off the screen as I was disturbed. But with all that being said, this is not a great movie. The acting is terrible. The dialogue is on a whole nother level of just plain awful. There are some creepy sequences throughout this movie. I don't want to spoil any in case you're going to watch it, but I will say pay attention to what you're watching. There could be stuff happening on a phone, behind people, people talking in the background, all different kinds of stuff. Just pay attention to what you're watching, and you're going to see some genuinely disturbing things. And if you watch the movie, of course, there's going to be disturbing things. But yeah, the dialogue is atrocious. The acting is very bad, and it's so cheesy at so many points, and it just was terribly, terribly paced. We're going between these little cheesy moment between best friends, and then boom, triggering moment that's super disturbing, to go back into like cheesy two-man, and then boom, triggering thing. It felt like the director wanted to make sure that there was at least one disturbing thing every 5 minutes of this movie. And whether it made sense or didn't, he just didn't care. He would just insert it into this movie because we need to disturb people, and that's the only reason why. But some sequences, like I've been saying, are disturbing, especially the end of the movie. There's a moment at the end, probably within the last... It's a long sequence. Probably the last 10 minutes of the movie, where that's the best acting performance that we see. There are so many things throughout this movie that the acting was just awful, that it was as disturbing as it was, like, the movie at that moment. the acting really shone through at that point. So yeah, to kind of sum everything up, Amy is our best actress in the movie. There are some disturbing moments, and I guess another pro that I would have with it is I did appreciate the camera work that they were doing. It's supposed to be, I think it's supposed to take place in 2007, so the cameras aren't very good. You know, they're taking from like webcams and phones, so the quality isn't good. I thought that was pretty clever and was done well. In terms of cons, acting, dialogue, the exploitive scenes, there needed to be a driving reason to why this was in the movie. And it just felt like it wanted to be exploitive, so we're going to show this, although we don't really need to. And I will say before I give a rating of this movie that I think the message behind this movie is pretty important, which is, you know, be careful of who you talk to online. You never know. If, you know, there's the signs like they don't turn on their camera if they're talking, you know, like the catfishing whole thing that we saw with the show Catfish. Yeah, that's a good message, you know, just be careful when you're online. You never know who you're talking to, stuff like that. Good message. Just stinks that the movie was not very good and that the acting wasn't good to go into exploitive scenes that just made it more uncomfortable to watch. Not because, well, not only because it's disturbing what's happening, but because the acting performances weren't good enough to make it more realistic. You'll understand if you've watched this movie and if you watch it. So, overall, I'd give this movie a 5 out of 10, and I don't recommend it. It's an exploitive film. You're gonna have moments that are genuinely disturbing, exploitive, but it just feels exploitive for the fun of it rather than it being for a message, which is unfortunate. So thank you everyone for watching this review, and be on the lookout for more reviews in the future. The next review is definitely going to be lighter in tone. It's not going to be exploitive, trigger warning, all of that. It's going to be a series review of Gravity Falls. I just watched the whole thing. I'm very excited to come out with a video about it because I really enjoyed it. So be on the lookout for that. But let's flash forward to the next review.